You know, there's something truly special about sitting down with a cup of tea, maybe with an old friend or a family member, and sharing stories from the past. The laughter, the memories, even the tears, they all weave together into something meaningful. But have you ever stopped to think about how powerful it is to tell your own story? Not just for the person listening, but for you. That's what we're going to talk about today, the healing power of telling your story. Because whether you realize it or not, every experience you've had, every challenge you've overcome, and every joy you've celebrated holds wisdom and strength. And when you share those stories, something beautiful happens. You begin to heal, to connect, and even to see your own life in a new light. Now you might be thinking, well, I'm no storyteller, or who would want to hear my old stories? But here's the truth. Your story matters. It matters to your children, your grandchildren, your friends, and yes, it matters to you. Because when we put our experiences into words, we don't just preserve them, we understand them. And that's where the healing begins. So let's start with the first way storytelling can bring healing, by helping us make sense of our lives. Think about a time when something difficult happened, maybe a loss, a change, or a struggle. At the time, it might have felt overwhelming, even confusing. But when we tell that story later, something shifts. We start to see the lessons, the strength we didn't know we had, or even the unexpected blessings that came from it. Take my friend Margaret, for example. She lost her husband a few years ago, and for the longest time, she couldn't talk about him without breaking down. But one day, her granddaughter asked her to tell a story about him, just a simple memory from when they were first married. And as Margaret shared it, she smiled. It was still bittersweet, of course, but for the first time in a long while, she felt close to him again. That's the power of storytelling. It helps us process our emotions and find meaning in even the hardest moments. Now, the second way storytelling heals is by connecting us to others and to ourselves. You see, when we share our stories, we're not just talking about the past, we're reminding ourselves of who we are, the choices we've made, the love we've given, the obstacles we've faced. They all shape us. And when we put them into words, we reclaim them. But it's not just about looking back. Sharing our stories also creates bridges between generations. Have you ever noticed how a grandchild's eyes light up when you tell them about what life was like when you were their age? Or how a friend nods along because they've been through something similar? That's the magic of connection. Our stories remind us that we're not alone, that others have walked this path too, and that there's comfort in knowing someone understands. And here's something else. Telling our stories can even change the way we see ourselves. Maybe you've spent years thinking of yourself as just a parent, a worker, a quiet neighbor, but when you start telling your story, you begin to see the courage, the resilience, the love that's been there all along. You realize, I've lived a life worth remembering. So how do we start? Well, it doesn't have to be complicated. You don't need to write a book or stand on a stage. It can be as simple as sharing a memory over dinner, writing a letter to a loved one, or even jotting down a few thoughts in a journal. The key is to begin, to let the words come without worrying if they're good enough, because your story, just as it is enough. And as we move forward, we'll explore even more ways storytelling can bring healing, how it helps us forgive, how it keeps our spirits alive, and how it leaves a legacy that lasts long after we're gone. Because your story isn't just about the past, it's a gift for the future. But for now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever told a story that brought you peace or joy? Or maybe there's one you've been meaning to share, but haven't yet. Let's start this conversation together, because every story begins with a single word. There's a saying I've always loved. We are the authors of our own lives. And isn't that the truth? Every memory, every triumph, even every stumble. It's all part of the story only you can tell. But here's something I've noticed. Sometimes, the stories we don't tell are the ones that weigh on us the most. The moments we keep tucked away, the words we never said, the memories we've been afraid to revisit. That's why today, we're going to talk about how telling our stories, especially the ones we've carried in silence, can be one of the most freeing things we'll ever do. Because healing isn't just about remembering the good times, it's also about giving voice to the parts of our lives that need a little tenderness. Let's start with forgiveness, both for others and for ourselves. You see, when we hold on to hurt, it's like carrying a heavy bag wherever we go. We might not even realize how much it's weighing us down until we finally set it down. And one of the most powerful ways to do that? Telling the story. Take my neighbor, Henry. For years, he carried a quiet anger toward his brother over an old family disagreement. They hadn't spoken in decades, and Henry always said it was water under the bridge. But one day, his daughter asked him about it, not to reopen old wounds, but just to understand. And as Henry told the story, really told it for the first time, something unexpected happened. He didn't feel that old bitterness anymore. Instead, he felt lighter. A few weeks later, he even reached out to his brother. They never fully reconciled, but Henry told me, just saying it out loud made me realize I didn't want to carry that hurt anymore. That's the thing about stories. When we give them air, they change. The sharp edges soften, the weight lessens. And sometimes, we even see things from a perspective we never considered before. Maybe the person who hurt us was struggling too. Maybe we were doing the best we could with what we knew at the time. Telling our story doesn't always mean fixing the past, but it can help us make peace with it. Now let's talk about another kind of healing, the kind that comes from reclaiming our joy. As we get older, it's easy to let the harder moments overshadow the bright ones. But when we tell our stories, we get to decide which ones we keep alive. Think about it. When was the last time you told someone about the day you fell in love? Or about that silly adventure you had with friends years ago? Or even about a small, ordinary moment that somehow stayed with you? Like the way the light came through the kitchen window in your first home. Those stories aren't just memories, they're proof. Proof that your life has been filled with moments worth celebrating. I'll never forget a woman named Evelyn who wrote to me after one of my videos. She said that after her husband passed, she couldn't bring herself to talk about him without crying. But then her grandson asked her, "Grandma, what was Grandpa like when he was young?" And so she told him about the time they'd gotten caught in the rain on their first date, laughing as they ran for cover. She said, "For the first time in years, I wasn't telling a story about losing him. I was telling a story about loving him." That's the power we hold when we choose which stories to tell. We get to remember not just what we've lost, but what we've had. And finally, there's the healing that comes from knowing our stories matter, that they'll outlast us. So many of us worry about being forgotten, especially as we get older. But when we share our stories, we're leaving behind something far more lasting than any photograph or keepsake. We're leaving a piece of who we are. I think about my own grandfather, who passed away when I was young. I don't remember much about him, but I do remember the stories he told, about growing up during the Depression, about the time he built a radio from scratch, about how he met my grandmother. Those stories made him real to me in a way nothing else could. They made him more than just a name or a face in an old picture. They made him alive. That's the gift you're giving when you tell your story, not just to yourself, but to everyone who hears it. You're saying, "I was here. My life meant something." And isn't that what we all want in the end? So how do we start telling these deeper stories? It doesn't have to be dramatic. Maybe it's writing a letter you never send. Maybe it's recording a voice memo for your family. Maybe it's just sitting with an old friend and saying, "Let me tell you about a time I've never talked about before." The important thing is to begin, to let those untold stories finally have their moment. Because here's what I've learned. Our stories aren't just about what happened. They're about who we became because of it. And when we share them, we don't just heal ourselves, we help others heal too. And in the next part, we'll talk about how to weave all these threads together, how to take the joy, the sorrow, the lessons, and the love, and turn them into a legacy that lives on. Because your story isn't finished yet. In so many ways, the most important chapters are still being written. You know, there's a beautiful tradition in some cultures where elders gather the young and say, "Come, sit with me. Let me tell you how the world was when I was your age." It's more than just storytelling. It's an act of love, a passing of wisdom, a way of saying, "This is where you come from." And that's what we're going to talk about today. How telling your story isn't just healing for you, but becomes a gift for those who come after. Because every memory you share, every lesson you've learned, every laugh and tear you pass along, it all becomes part of something bigger. It becomes your legacy. Now, I know the word legacy can feel heavy, like something meant for famous people or history books. But here's the truth. Your legacy isn't about grand gestures or perfect achievements. It's about the moments that made you you. The quiet victories, the hard-won wisdom, the love you gave and received. And the best way to leave that behind? By telling your story. Let's start with the simplest, most powerful way to do that. Through family. Think about the stories you heard from your parents or grandparents. Maybe it was how they met, how they survived tough times, or even just the silly little habits they had. Those stories shaped you, didn't they? They made you feel connected to something bigger than yourself. I'll never forget a letter a viewer named Robert sent me. He said that when his father was in his last years, he started writing down memories. Just bits and pieces at first, like the smell of his mother's kitchen or the sound of the train that passed by his childhood home. After his father passed, Robert found those notes and wove them into a book for his own children. He wrote, "It's like Dad is still sitting at the kitchen table with us, telling his stories. My kids never got to meet him, but they know him." That's the magic of passing stories down. You're not just sharing memories, you're giving your family a compass, a way to understand where they come from, who they are, and maybe even how to navigate their own challenges someday. But what if you don't have children or close family? That doesn't mean your stories don't matter. Your legacy can live in so many ways, through friends, through community, even through strangers who need to hear what you've learned. Take my friend Helen, for example. She never married or had kids, but the stories she could tell about traveling the world as a nurse, about the friends she'd loved and lost, about starting over at 60 when life didn't go as planned. A few years ago, she started volunteering at a senior center, just sharing stories with others who felt alone. And one day, a young woman there told her, "Listening to you makes me feel brave about getting older." That's a legacy too, not written in a book, but etched in the hearts of people you've touched. Now, you might be thinking, how do I even begin to put my life into words? The good news is there's no right or wrong way. You don't need perfect grammar or a dramatic tale. Start small. Tell one story at a time. Next time you're with someone you love, say, "Did I ever tell you about?" And share just one memory. Write a letter to a grandchild, a friend, or even your younger self. You don't have to send it. Sometimes the healing is in the writing. Record your voice. There's something powerful about hearing the way you laugh, the pauses, the emotion. Even a simple voice memo on your phone can become a treasure. Use photos as prompts. Flip through an old album and let the pictures tell you what to say. The important thing isn't how you do it, it's that you do. Because every time you tell your story, you're doing two extraordinary things. You're healing pieces of your own heart, and you're planting seeds that will bloom long after you're gone. So let me leave you with this thought. Your life has been a story only you could tell, full of moments no one else has lived, lessons no one else has learned in quite the same way. And when you share that story, you're not just looking back, you're reaching forward to comfort, to guide, to connect with those who need your words, even if you haven't met them yet. That's the healing power of telling your story. It's never too late to start. And trust me, the world needs to hear yours. So tell me, what's one story you want to make sure is never forgotten? Share it in the comments below. I'd love to hear it. And if this video touched you, pass it along to someone who might need to hear this message today. Remember, your story isn't just about the past. It's a light for the future. Keep shining it. Until next time, keep telling your story. The world is listening. Do subscribe to keep the circle growing.